First at 9 this Saturday, the 23rd of November 2024. Review relief. IMF approves Sri Lanka's third review under the extended fund facility. Over $330 million expected in the next disbursement. Word of advice. IMF calls on the government to be careful of tax exemptions. Calls on the haves to help out the have-nots. At long last, local government polls scheduled to be held early next year, reveals Minister Vijitha Herath.
Chilo Dairy, Sri Lankawama Kiren Perata. ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
කන්ට පරිස්සම් කරගත්තොත් අපි පරිස්සම්.
Asian Paints Causeway Aquasave වැස්සත් මට්ටුවෙන් ගෙදරත් තිස්නේ.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Derana First at 9. I'm Aditya Singh joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Now taking you straight to your top story this evening, the IMF staff and the Sri Lankan authorities have reached a staff-level agreement on economic policies at the conclusion of the third review of Sri Lanka's economic reform program supported by the IMF's extended fund facility. In a statement, the IMF said that once the review is approved by the IMF management and completed by the IMF Executive Board, Sri Lanka will have access to about $333 million in financing. Addressing a media briefing to announce the conclusion of the review, the IMF noted that the 2025 budget will be presented by the government has to be in line with the IMF program and added that authorities can make amendments within the guardrails of the program. On the 17th of November, an IMF delegation headed by Senior Mission Chief for Sri Lanka, Peter Brewer, arrived in Sri Lanka to conduct the third review under the Extended Fund Facility program approved for the island nation on the 20th of March last year. During their visit, the delegation held discussions with top officials including President Anura Dissanayake, Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe and Deputy Minister of Economic Development Professor Anil Jayantha Fernando. Issuing a statement at the conclusion of their visit, the IMF announced that the delegation and the Sri Lankan authorities reached a staff-level agreement on economic policies, concluding the third review under the Extended Fund Facility program. Addressing a media briefing today to announce the review's successful conclusion, the visiting IMF delegation briefed the public on the key outcomes of their engagements with the government.
Completion of the review by the IMF Executive Board requires the implementation by the authorities of prior actions, including the submission of a 2025 budget consistent with program objectives, and it also requires confirming that the program remains adequately financed. Upon completion of the Executive Board review, Sri Lanka would have access to about $330 million. This would bring IMF financial support disbursed under the arrangement to a total of about $1.3 billion. I would like to point out that program performance has been strong. All quantitative performance criteria and indicative targets for end June 2024 were met, except for the target on social spending. And similarly, the targets for end September 2024 were met, except for the one on social spending. Most structural benchmarks due before October were either met or implemented with delay. Some benchmarks are delayed because of the election cycle. I would like to note that the new government's commitment to the program objectives has enhanced confidence and ensures policy continuity. Sustaining the reform momentum is critical to safeguarding the hard-won gains of the program. It is also critical to put the economy on a path towards lasting recovery and stable and inclusive growth. Regarding the debt restructuring process, Sri Lanka's recent agreement in principle with bondholders is an important milestone. It puts Sri Lanka's debt on a path towards sustainability. The critical next steps are to complete the commercial debt restructuring, finalize bilateral agreements with official creditors along the lines of the accord with the Official Creditor Committee, and implement the terms of the other agreements. This will help restore Sri Lanka's debt sustainability. The new government's mandate will reinvigorate governance reforms addressing corruption risks, rebuilding economic confidence and making growth more robust and inclusive.
From the completion of the third review to approval of the fourth disbursement, what are the conditions on Sri Lankan part to complete?
There are some prior actions, and those relate mostly to the budget. We will be interested in convincing ourselves that this budget is in line with the program objectives. So we'll be having a very close discussion with the authorities on that. The authorities have committed to stay within the guardrails of the program, meaning important guardrails are the primary surplus, the revenue, and also the quality of the fiscal measures. And within those guardrails, we have agreed on a package that allows them to achieve their priorities and objectives. And that will eventually be documented in the budget that the government is preparing. And as soon as that is submitted to Parliament, it will then be possible to go ahead with the process for the fourth review.
The previous government said that vehicle import restrictions will be lifted by February 2025. If the current government goes ahead with it, does the IMF recommendations comply with it?
That is a decision by the government that has implications with respect to monetary policy. Yes, that is a part that we have discussed. In fact, we have already discussed in the previous review. Lifting these restrictions will be a very important source of revenue for the government in the year ahead. It's one of the more and more rare opportunities to raise revenue in Sri Lanka. So it'll be an important part of that. Of course, it needs to be managed carefully with respect to reserves of the country.
One of the criticisms that came up during the negotiations about the IMF and once a bailout was announced was that some of the reforms unfairly sort of target the poorer segments of society, and the more richer brackets of Sri Lanka's population were left relatively unscathed. Was this something that was raised in negotiations that you had with the government?
You said the program was targeting the poor. I would respectfully disagree with that. It's targeting the poor to help them out. This crisis is extremely costly for the population, for everybody in Sri Lanka. There's no doubt about that. It affects the poor the most because they don't really have the buffers to deal with the cost. And also, it's important to remember that this hardship, it doesn't come from being imposed by the IMF. It's the result of the crisis that has taken place. The IMF is here to help with that, to help have a program that allows bringing the economy back on track so as to help everybody in the country.
Given the strong mandate from the people, including the middle class who voted the previous government out, is government sort of rethinking its own strategy or stance on Sri Lanka's way forward? Or you're firm and you won't show any flexibility going forward?
The challenges for Sri Lanka are the same. Sri Lanka has to think about how to address these, how to ensure a full recovery from the crisis and have stable and inclusive growth. So the main guardrails of the program are designed in such a way to facilitate that. Within those guardrails, a review is an opportunity to take stock of developments and to look at are any adjustments to the program necessary. We have done that at the first review, and we have done that at the second review, and that happens at every IMF review of IMF programs. So we do discuss with the authorities their preferences for how they want to adjust the program, and we have managed to reach staff level agreement on the basis of a way forward that stays within the guardrails of the program, but at the same time allows the authorities an opportunity to make amendments in line with their priorities, and they will put these in their budget proposals at the appropriate time.
Horizon Campus 2024 Intake 2. Register now.
Union Assurance.
Welcome to Cinnamon Life, South Asia's biggest entertainment hub, where awe awaits.
චන්දුරුසුනේ කාගෙත් මන අපේ සිංහ TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
Sadaharita Plantations Limited, celebrating 22 years of your trust.
Now, meanwhile, later in an exclusive interview with Indiveri Amuwatta on Ada Derana, IMF Senior Mission Chief Peter Brewer noted that the government has to be careful in granting tax exemptions, adding that tax exemptions have not served Sri Lanka very well in the past. His comments came against a backdrop where the incumbent government during the election campaign trail pledged to abolish the value-added tax, which according to the IMF amounts to 1/3 of the tax collection in Sri Lanka. Speaking further, the IMF Senior Mission Chief said that through the imposition of the payee tax and the corporate income tax, the haves in society will be able to aid the have-nots, which will eventually help to protect the poor who are affected by the crisis.
The present government's campaign was that they would abolish value-added tax for certain essential commodities as well, and targets set by the EFF program for 2025 end is the achievement of a 15% tax to GDP ratio. Is that achievable and maybe pose a potential risk to collection?
The value-added tax is an important part of the tax collections in Sri Lanka. They amount to about 1/3 of tax collections. And indeed, earlier in the program, we had extended discussions with the then government about VAT exemptions that were quite prevalent throughout Sri Lanka. The 2024 budget of the current year eliminated most, not all, but most value-added tax exemptions, and that was a gain of about 1.2 percentage points of GDP, which is very significant. VAT will continue to be an important source of collection. Exemptions have not served Sri Lanka very well in terms of addressing the causes of its crisis. In one of our staff reports, it might have been the second or the first review, we looked at what has been the value of these tax exemptions. And in 2024, the value of these tax exemptions, they amounted to about 4 percentage points of GDP when the country was collecting 7% of GDP. And since then, it has undergone an effort of 5 percentage points of GDP in revenue collection. If you put the 4% in relation to the 5% of effort, it just gives you an impression of how significant these exemptions have been. And that is really something that may be worth looking at. Of course, we have managed to reduce that number because of the VAT exemptions being mostly eliminated, but there are still considerable exemptions in Sri Lanka.
What measures do you think could be proposed to really elevate the pressure on the average common man in Sri Lanka?
The impact of the crisis, no doubt, has been very, very large on everybody in Sri Lanka. For example, inflation. Everybody faced these very high prices. The poor people are least equipped to deal with it because they have no buffers to deal with these very high prices. Better off people are better equipped with dealing with this high inflation, and so it continues to be very important that those who can make a contribution to society do that, and that they do that in line with their ability to contribute. So having a personal income tax system, a corporate income tax system that asks richer people, better off people for more contributions is very important for the government to deliver the essential services that it needs to deliver, and that everybody is looking to the government to deliver, including support for the poor people.
Fast track your career from O-levels with eSoft.
After O-levels, start your Australian degree in just 8 months with ACBT's Foundation Program. Enroll now before it's too late. Call 071 115 1234 for Colombo or 077 011 3223 for Kandy.
Diabetesol, සීනිවලින් පරිස්සම්වන ඔබට අමතක නොවන පෝෂණය.
Prime Group ලංකාවේ ප්‍රථම වතාවට හඳුන්වා දෙන land leasing ලේසියෙන් මීටමක්.
Single 1111 up to 60% off from the 11th November to the 17th of November.
Kalani wire කිසිගින්නක් නෑ.
කිසිගින්නක් නෑ. Kalani Fire Shield Wire.
Now, meanwhile, in other local news, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Employment and Tourism Vijitha Herath revealed that local government elections will be held early next year. The Foreign Minister highlighted that plans are underway to hold discussions with the top election office to hold the elections in compliance with the Supreme Court ruling.
Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Employment and Tourism Vijitha Herath and Minister of Agriculture K.D. Lalkantha called on the chief prelates of the Askiri Mahaviharaya. Meanwhile, the Foreign Minister also arrived in Akurana yesterday to meet the Muslim community.
No, that is not true. When I served as the cabinet minister in 2004, I proposed the granting of fabric for the production of hijabs needed by the Muslim community. I am a Sinhalese. It was not proposed by a Muslim minister. It is not necessary to appoint a Muslim minister for the concerns of the Muslim community to be accepted or recognized. On the other hand, we nominated Adam Bawa to parliament through our national list, as there were no Muslim ministers elected to parliament through the parliamentary polls. Also, a Muslim was appointed as the governor of the Western province. What you said is not an issue. We have appointed the right persons to the right place. The Supreme Court issued a ruling mandating the LG polls to be held as soon as possible. However, no provisions were set aside to hold the local government polls this year. Therefore, we have decided to hold the local government elections early next year. The Local Government Act must first be passed in Parliament, after which we can call for nominations. Following that, we can hold the local government election. We intend to follow those steps without disobeying the court ruling. Plans are also underway to hold discussions with the Election Commission in this regard. Now, after days of deliberations and contemplations, the SJB and the NDF are yet to decide on their nominees for the vacant national list seats of both parties. Now, let's take a look at some of the latest political developments in that regard. As the SJB continues to deliberate on the appointments to be made to its vacant national list seats, the party held another meeting today to discuss key details pertaining to the matter. Subsequent to the meeting, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa addressed the media.
ඒවා නිසි කලට නිසි ලෙසට නිසි ආකාරයට සිදුවේ. කවද වගේ කියලාද ඔබතුමාලා? අපි ඒක දැනුම් දෙන්න. ඒනට අර්බුදයක් කියලා පැහැදිලි වෙනවනේ මෙහෙම වුණාම ජනතාව. මේ ලයිස්තු වල ඉතාමත්ම පරිණත කොට්ටාසයක් ඉන්නේ. හොඳයි ඉන්නේ.
අර යාපනයෙන් ආපු මන්ත්‍රී කෙනෙක් හැසිරීම පිළිබඳ ප්‍රශ්නයක් ඇහිලාද ඔබතුමාගේ පුතේ වාඩි වෙලාද උඩ?
ඒ ස්ථාවර නියෝග පිළිබඳව අවබෝධයක් ලබා ගන්නකොට සියලු දෙනාම දැනගනි කොහොමද පාර්ලිමේන්තු ක්‍රියාදාමයේ ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙන්නේ කියලා. සජිබේ නායකත්වයේ වෙනස් වෙනවද? ඔබතුමාම ඉදිරියට දරනවද? වෙන කාට හරි දෙනවද? ඒක පාරිභෝගික භාණ්ඩයක් නෙවෙයි. අලෙවි කරන්නට, හුවමාරු කරගන්නට තියෙන භාණ්ඩයක්වත් නෙවෙයි. ඒ සියලු තීන්දුව తీරන රටේ ජනතාව ගන්න තීන්දුව සහ තීරණයක්. අපේ පක්ෂය තාම අවුරුදු 4මාරත් 5ත් අතර ප්‍රමාණයක් තමයි අපේ පක්ෂය ආරම්භ කරලා. එතන සාධාරණ කාලයක් අවශ්‍යයි මේ පක්ෂයට ශක්තිමත් වෙමින් ඉදිරියට යන්නට. ජාතික ලයිස්තු මන්ත්‍රී ධුරේ එතකොට හම්බ වෙනකොට ඔබතුමාට මොකද වෙන්නේ? බලමු නෑ ඔබතුමා තනියෙන් හම්බුනේ මොකද මේ පොඩක් කියන්න. නෑ බලමු ඉතින් අපි ගිහලා නා ජයවා. රවි කරුණානායක වගේ ඔබතුමා හොරරාජ ගිහලා ගනි වගේ නේ. ඒව කරන්නේ නෑ නේ මම. Similarly, the SLFP Central Working Committee convened at its party headquarters yesterday to discuss matters pertaining to the crisis within the New Democratic Front on the appointment of an MP to the NDF's remaining national list seat.
We contested under the banner of the gas cylinder by aligning ourselves with the NDF. It is evident that a crisis has emerged with regard to the national list seat that we are entitled to. Nevertheless, the Central Working Committee and the Politburo agreed that the SLFP must get the national list seat that it is entitled to. We make that request once again as previously made.
Meanwhile, several MPs across the political spectrum shared their thoughts on the current political landscape in the country.
The problem is not on to whom the national list seat was promised. We have the responsibility to secure that seat for someone from our group. The country expects young and competent leaders. There is no government opposition difference in that regard. We decided that Kanchan Wijesekara must get the remaining national list seat. We took that decision, drafted a letter accordingly, signed it and handed it over.
There is no point in fighting for 1 or 2 national list seats when the government commands 2/3 in parliament. We will once again engage in active politics on behalf of the public. I have no intention of continuing my politics with the NDF any further.
Ravi Karunanayake made his way to parliament at the expense of Ranil Wickremesinghe's dignity. A massive crisis has emerged within the NDF. I am of the view that the country has no opposition at the moment. The purpose of an opposition has been rendered pointless since the party that commands the government is a party that works for the people.
Please make good on the promises you made on stage. You promised that you will bring those responsible for the central bank bond scam before courts within 48 hours of your appointment to office. Please do that. You said that you have about 400 files on corruption and scandals in your possession along with corroborative evidence. Please summon those responsible as such to court. And now here's a look at some local news around the island in brief.
A SUV veered off the road and hurtled down in the Bujamo in Hettipola in Kuliapitiya today. The tragic accident took place at around 1 a.m. this morning near the Bujamo bridge. The submerged vehicle along with the mortal remains of 2 individuals were recovered with the assistance of a crane. The Kuliapitiya police revealed that the individuals were travelling from Vennappur to Kobegane before the accident claimed their lives. According to reports, the deceased are brothers of 25 and 27 years of age. The post-mortem conducted at the Kuliapitiya hospital revealed that drowning to be the cause of both deaths. In the meantime, protests were launched before the Sri Lanka Bureau of Foreign Employment today by a group who claimed to be eligible for the Korean E8 visa program. The protesters hold that they were aggrieved by the Bureau's rejection of the E8 visa request made by them. As the protest intensified, tensions heightened between the police and the protesters. In other local news, the police have discovered that the 2 main suspects of the Minuangoda bank heist are attempting to flee the country. The theft occurred on the 18th of November when a driver of a cash-in-transit service vehicle fled with over 70 million rupees in the company-owned vehicle, which was later found abandoned in the Uggalgoda area in Gampaha. After investigations, the Gampaha Division Crimes Bureau and the Minuangoda police conducted a joint operation leading to the arrest of one suspect alleged to have involved in the theft. Police suspect that the suspects currently evading arrest are planning to escape to India through Jaffna. The police further asserted that measures are in place to thwart any attempt made by the 2 suspects in question to escape the country.
Welcome back. Now in your business news, Sri Lankan Airlines was honored with the highly coveted 2025 Apex Best Entertainment Award within the Central and Southern Asian region at the FTE Apex Asia Expo held in Singapore. The national carrier also edged in its position as a 4-star major airline in the 2025 Apex Official Airline Ratings for the 8th consecutive year. The national carrier Sri Lankan Airlines, a member airline of the One World Airline Alliance, won the 2025 Apex Best Entertainment Award for the Central and Southern Asian region at the FTE Apex Asia Expo held in Singapore. The Apex Awards, renowned for being driven exclusively by certified passenger feedback, evaluated over 1 million flights from 600 airlines, focusing on key aspects such as seat comfort, cabin service, in-flight entertainment and meal quality. Additionally, Sri Lankan Airlines upheld its position as a 4-star major airline in the 2025 Apex Official Airline Ratings for the 8th consecutive year. Manager Product Development of Sri Lankan Airlines, Maria Sathasivam, said that the content portfolio of the airline has been meticulously curated to reflect current entertainment trends, ensuring that passengers stay entertained throughout their journey. Sri Lankan Airlines' in-flight entertainment system boasts an impressive collection of Hollywood blockbusters, the latest releases, and a diverse library of regional films, including titles from Sri Lanka and South Asia. The IFA system also features over 100 carefully curated audio albums, offering a blend of international chart toppers and cherished local classics to cater to every musical preference. And now some corporate news in brief. The Galadari Hotel entered into a restaurant management agreement with Dubai UAE restaurant operator Soho Hospitality corporate service provider FZ Co to manage its Above 11 restaurant. In its corporate disclosure, the hotel added that FZ Co will develop, manage and operate the Above 11 restaurant at Galadari Hotel, Colombo 1. The restaurant is scheduled to be opened by end 2025. Meanwhile, H&B Finance PLC concluded its latest financial literacy workshops under the theme Financial Literacy for Development, aimed at empowering micro and small-scale entrepreneurs. The event hosted over 300 participants, equipping them with critical financial knowledge to enhance business operations and drive sustainable growth. According to HNB PLC, the participants were guided through strategies to strengthen their financial practices, positioning them for long-term success and resilience in the marketplace. In other corporate news, SLT Mobitel's mobile money platform Mcash announced partnership with Lanka Satosa, the country's largest state-owned retail chain, to introduce bill collection services across Lanka Satosa's network of outlets nationwide. The partnership aims to leverage SLT Mobitel's cutting-edge financial technology infrastructure powered by Mcash to enable seamless bill payment facilities at over 448 Lanka Satosa outlets island-wide. This partnership offers benefits that align with Sri Lanka's broader digital economy initiatives, enhancing accessibility to digitized services, particularly in suburban and rural areas. That's all the news we have for you tonight. Thank you. Have a great night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit adaderana.lk.